Hi, I'm Angela H. Brown. I'm the Executive Director for Craft Lake City. The Craft Lake City Business Academy is taught for creatives by creatives. These business courses are led by established makers in the Salt Lake City art scene. You'll be learning tips, tricks, and trade secrets from their combined decades of experience. I hope you enjoy this class, and thank you so much for your support of Craft Lake City and Utah's creative community.
COPPERHIVE Vintage. So we're a small local vintage shop that specializes in authentic vintage clothing and odds and ends from the 1940s through 1970s. We source and curate our offerings independently. So that this is me and my husband. We go out and find everything in the shop ourselves. So we're a little bit different than other vintage stores that specialize in consignment. They'll essentially have vendors that come in and rent a space of their shop, whereas we go out and find everything that we bring into the store. So we look for things that are fun, bright, and happy offerings. Recently, we're expanding our shop to include house-made brands made by us. So these would be my brands Obnoxious Plastic, which focuses on accessories, and Chubby Dust Bunny, which is a sustainable plus-size line. There's a little bio about me. I'm kind of creative to a fault. I have lots of ideas of grandeur. I love old things. I had too much stuff, so that's kind of why I created COPPERHIVE Vintage, to share these things and kind of my visions with other people. Outside of the shop, I'm fat positive. I believe that plus size people deserve access to not only pretty clothes, but equal access to medical care, housing, jobs, and daily accommodations without fat phobic biases. So that's something that's really important to me. I'm a hobby sewist. I'm learning how to create vintage pieces in my size and others that aren't currently accessible in the marketplace. This is kind of how Chubby Dust Bunny has really kind of grown into a brand. Branding with COPPERHIVE Vintage is tricky because all of my offerings are different depending on the day. So whereas I differ from having a consistent logo or branding, I'll change it depending on current trends, my inventory, things to reflect the customer's needs. I always have a consistent background or tone just to kind of keep it all tied together. Obnoxious Plastic is my, quote unquote, bright accessories for boring personalities. I make very obnoxious jewelry, big, loud prints, things like that. It kind of started, I do physical therapy for my hands, and one of the practices they wanted me to do was to create things that allowed me to keep my muscle memory in my hands. So that's kind of where Obnoxious Plastic started, working with clays and things like that. So I stick to simple branding. I honestly created this doodle one night and was like, I love that it's just black and white. It's simple because my pieces are really so loud that the balance of the simple branding worked really well. And then Chubby Dust Bunny. This is a new brand that I've kind of created within the last, 12 months. Really since the pandemic had started. I've been a hobby sewist for a long time, and when the pandemic started and the shop was closed, I started to make masks because I realized, wow, there's a really big need for this. And I was very thankful that I kind of learned a lot about production sewing. I calculated it up and I've made like 3,500 masks in the last year. So I learned a lot about production sewing, how to set boundaries with that. I learned a lot just by doing it and kind of creating this business through that. Also, the access to plus size clothing in the vintage world is very minimal. So I wanted to create a space for that to be an option in the future too. Okay, so best practices. So things I like to keep in mind when I'm brainstorming for a shop space is one, customer flow. So you want to have an idea of how you want your customer to move through your space or your booth. The one way that I do this is I start with the register. In the beginning, I would kind of set up my booth and then I'd be like, oh no, where am I going to check people out? So now I just start with the register option. So yeah, where are you going to set up your register? The things that you want to think about that is, where do I want my customers to pay, line up, kind of where do I want to direct that traffic to go? Craft Lake is requiring a back wall. So I added this in just because I know a lot of us are doing the DIY festival. They are requiring a back wall for all inside and outside booths, so 5x10s and the 10x10s. The only difference is the outside booths that are 10x10s will be required to have a tent. And then another way that planning for your booth, I like to think about, for some people this isn't as big of a concern, but is loss prevention. So how can I set up my space to kind of minimize the loss? The biggest thing I would say with that is keep your valuables close and be able to have an eye on them at all times. Your register might change depending on if you are worried about loss prevention. So like if you have a lot of fine jewelry, you might want to set your register towards the back, and that way you're able to sit there and kind of watch all of your goods. Loss prevention isn't just solely a merchandising tool, but there are tips and tricks that you can use to kind of help you there. Craft Lake does a really good job when you check in that you get assigned a zone manager. And I would recommend adding them to your contacts, putting them in as like Craft Lake zone managers. So if anything ever happens, you can kind of text them and they can help you with any situation that might arise. We're going to talk about it tonight too, but packaging is a good loss prevention tool. And then customer service. So if you notice that a lot of people are lining up, let's say you have your register in the front of your booth and you are utilizing the aisle to allow people to line up in, and you notice that a lot of people are lining up, you're not really sure like what people have, you can use line greetings. Hey, I'll be with you in a couple seconds. Let me just finish ringing them up to kind of help with that. You can also, hey, do you want me to set those things up for you up front if you're worried about loss prevention? All right, so how I've designed for smaller and larger spaces. First thing, I always try to remember is if I'm outside or inside. Like Craft Lake City, bring a tent if you're outside. You never know what the weather is going to be like. And a few years ago, we had this crazy storm at Craft Lake City, and it was insane. So being able to protect that your inventory and your vision is really important. So I've kind of laid out how I've designed spaces according to the Craft Lake booth sizes, but these are pretty general guidelines. I feel like all craft markets and farmers markets kind of use the same dimensions, so they kind of are flexible throughout. So 5x10, so you're going to want to present all of your merchandise clearly. This would be like, I like to use categories, so you keep like your prints together, your clothing together, just keep all of your categories together. I kind of call them like a utilitarian merchandising trick. So you want all of your categories in one area so it's easy for a customer to find things. Signage is a big one. It's something that I struggle in, but I know the power of signage. So you're going to want to have a big shop banner with your shop name so people can find you. I know that Craft Lake lets us in early, so you have opportunities to do that. But if you're having a downtime and you've noticed that you've sold a few prints and, oh, there's a few missing, that's a good time to kind of really restock your booth and refresh. So moving into 10x10s, I would still use the same principles we talked about in the 5x10. So presenting all your merchandise clearly, having that visible signage, restocking often, but you've got a little bit more space to kind of consider your flow, where you want customers to enter, how you can direct them through your booth, where you would like to put your register. For me personally, I like to put my register up front. I've worked crazy vintage shows where literally there's no room to like move and we're like standing on chairs trying to take people's payments. So I like to utilize the aisle as a lineup station for when customers are paying, that way that I don't have customers that are waiting to pay. I don't have customers that are looking at merchandise in the booth at the same time. It's like the people that are in the booth are looking at merchandise and the people outside the booth are waiting to pay. So that's kind of how I do it. But there is a real benefit to also having your register towards the back, because then people are forced to come inside of your booth and see the whole experience. So you just kind of have to play with the pros and cons of what would be best for you. Even bigger. So we have a vintage trailer that we normally sell out of. So I have a lot of experience merchandising a 20x10 space. And really the biggest difference is you still use a lot of the same techniques. I mean, you're still going to present your merchandise clearly. Signage is still important, even if you're not good at it. You still need to restock. You still need to consider how customers are going to move through their space. The biggest difference is you can kind of start playing more with the branding and lifestyle kind of merchandising. So when I say lifestyle merchandising, you kind of create vignettes based off of that, your customers. And then you can also have multiple areas of signage. So you might have the big shop banner, and then when people check out at your register, you'll have just a smaller shop banner that has your name, where to find you in the future, and things like that. So here's some examples. I know we talked about last time that CLC DIY Fest hashtag, so I went ahead and added a few examples from these. First one is the straight art. I think they do a beautiful job of the utilitarian kind of style of merchandising. So all of the categories are like clearly together. You have like these beautiful paintings here, the little minifigs here, it's kind of skateboards and bigger arts on the bottom. They have prints all in one spot. And then they also have like very clear signage. I know that you can be able to see this signage from aisles away. So people are going to be able to find them easily in the festival where there are lots of artisans. So next is Liz's. I love how Liz, it's a smaller booth, so it's going to be like a 5x10 booth. But they, instead of doing the open booth, added a table in the center. So what this allows them to do is show more merchandise. And then also they have kind of a secret spot to hide backstock, snacks, all the important things there. So I really love how they did this. But both are great examples of using the categories together. So there's all their art here, all their apparel here, which is awesome. And then I did Parker Rose here on the last example. Ty is really great about knowing his customer and style. So he creates this amazingly curated booth. It has a very distinctive way of, I know how my customers are going to enter. There's 2 ways that they can enter. The flow is very, very good. They also have like a hidden fitting room on this right-hand side, which is amazing and something that you should definitely have if you do apparel. And then they also have this like hidden kind of checkout closet area where they're able to hide backstock, have their bags, and check people out so people aren't just kind of hanging out in their booth. Okay, so how we're planning for our booth. This is a old picture from a market that we did at the Utah State Fair Park. We're planning to have kind of a U-shaped booth. So customers can enter from either this side, and then on this side, it's kind of cut off in the picture. So you're able to enter from multiple areas of the booth. And then I allow customers to kind of use this aisle to be able to line up. And so they're not really in my booth using valuable shop space. So things I need to plan for are a fitting room. Like I said before, we kind of use a vintage trailer to sell out of, but we've retired it during the pandemic. I'm actually sitting in it right now. It's my husband's art studio at the moment. So we've retired it. So we're going to go back to this old metal frame, and that's something I need to look for. And then also better signage. I am not very strong in signage, but I'm taking Katie's notes of having clear branding, and I'm going to have an awesome sign this year. So I have little things like mugs and photos. There's actually like jewelry in this one. There's little pins in this, and just kind of like little knickknacks here. And I do actually sell a lot of like, oh, someone will pick up a mug and add it to their pile. So it's a great way. There's also this kind of rack that's off to the left too. You can shop this from both sides of the booth. So as people are lining up, they can kind of look at that rack as well. So we kind of talked about some examples of merchandising while we looked through those photos. I kind of broke it into 2 simple ways. Utilitarian, so you're gonna want to keep your categories together. Categories for me in our shop are like housewares, clothing, and then now handmade. So I kind of use this photo to the right as a reference. So I have like all of my dresses on different racks throughout the store, but I want to make sure that all dresses are on a rack, all sweaters are on a rack. I split up even my categories into subcategories. So In this picture, I use all addresses as a category. Lifestyle, so you can create groupings of items to create a lifestyle that might appeal to your customer. I would display items that would entice a specific type of customer. So what this photo, like on the right, I have very feminine style frocks here. So I displayed them above with very feminine style photography, prints, things like that. So people maybe even subconsciously could kind of know like the things on this rack are going to be very feminine based off of the pictures that are above it. Or I really like the stuff on this rack, so maybe I would like the stuff above it too. I think there can be a lot of different type of lifestyles. I think this is when it benefits knowing your customer and start kind of nailing down what they would like. I know a lot of you have said that you would probably be your number one customer. So when it comes to merchandising, maybe it's about, these are the things that I think look great together. I think that would be a good place to start, but then also expanding to, like I talked about before, at Craft Lake City, my trendy customer is probably my number one customer. So when I create displays or mannequins, I like to mix eras. I look at current trends and see how I can incorporate that. But then when I do vintage markets, I keep the same styles together. So this front kind of rack with the flowers on the top, it's all going to be like a farmhouse vibe. So everyone that normally shops like these bottles can find other things that they will like inside of this area. And then towards the back where there's this macrame is going to be more of my boho vibe. So everyone that likes macrame, this wicker, plants, things like that, all of the things that they like are in this general area. It just makes it easier for customers to find more things that they would like. It's also a fun artistic way for you to kind of represent your stuff in different types of way. My shop band for this following one is just going to be my shop name. And I'm going to rely on things like a menu board. So again, this little plaquette I have at checking out for additional information. You can also use signage as like price points. So if you have a lot of prints that are the same price, you can use signage like, hey, all of these prints on this wall are 10 bucks, or all of these earrings are 20 bucks. And then untraditional kind of signage, which I also think is beneficial for merchandising, are kind of lifestyle shoots or editorial type photos. You can get banners made of those, especially if you are dealing in clothing, things like that. They're a way for customers to see your things on many types of bodies, which I think is really important. So let's hop back up to the packaging. So how to effectively use packaging on items to help with advertising, merchandising, and loss prevention. So packaging that I use are hang tags, card backs, and like kind of like a sealed type of packaging. This helps with advertising because when people buy your stuff, they want to share it online in stories. So I would highly recommend having your shop name and your social media so that when they post a Craft Lake haul, they are able to tag you, and then you obviously get shared to a bigger audience. I like to package things on little card backs just because it makes it easier to merchandise. You can keep all of the same things together. You can put like all of my sparkle unicorn earrings are in these packages, and I put them all in this kind of basket. So that's a good way to keep everything together and transport it and make sure that it doesn't get all tangled up in a mess. Loss prevention is also another plus for packaging. If you do put everything on a card back, it makes it a lot harder to take a small patch if it's on a 5x7 piece of paper versus if it was like freehand. And that's something I don't necessarily worry about too much at markets. I know it does happen, but for the shop, it's a lot less when I package it up nicely. So I shared some packaging examples here. So this is kind of what I was talking about on the left-hand side with the obnoxious box stick. These are kind of my card backs that I stick all my earrings on, and then I'm able to kind of hang them up and everything is able to be easily shopped and shown. This is kind of like that enclosed, so it's the same easy packaging that I use for the earrings. I just put it in a little clear plastic container. That way things don't fall off. I don't lose them. If I'm doing markets and there's weather, I don't really have to worry about them getting as dirty. And then this middle section is going to be the tags, like the hang tags that I use that I put on the back of, or put on all of my clothing. I obviously have my shop name here and kind of where to find me online. This is really good, like dual purpose business cards, honestly. Like as you're ringing someone up, if you don't have time to like give them a flyer, you can be like, hey, our tags are actually our business cards. You can find us on Instagram, and our address is on the business cards too. And then I do separate ones for handmade, just because it's a little bit different vibe. It's important for me to know, for people to know that things are handmade versus vintage in the store. So I want them to know like why they may be paying a little bit more than the vintage stuff or things like that. Something that I use that not a lot of people use with their tags is I make new tags so I order enough tags for 2,000 things. And then when I reorder, I make a new tag. It's just a good way for me to timeline my merchandise so that I know if things have been sitting there for a really long time, if I should clearance them out or maybe donate them or things like that. So that's another way that you can use merchandising to be like a business tool if that would work for you. So we're going to talk about competition and community. We're really going to talk about competition like objectively. So how identifying your competition can help you. So locally, like my competition would be other vintage stores, other trendy boutiques, so like Decades, the antique malls, things like that. Nationally, I would say my competitors are like Target. Oh my gosh, I mean, any trendy retail spot. When you're thinking about competitors, think about kind of like who they are selling to and what they sell. I also wanted to note that as like creatives, and especially when we're selling things that we make, we have a lot of pressure from competition. For me, it can kind of like turn into imposter syndrome. But I feel like if you process these feelings and you actually look at your actual strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, you can make an action plan and kind of like move forward. So I think we all deal with it, but just feel those feelings, see what you're great at, see what you can improve on personally, and kind of move through them. When we're thinking about competition, you want to think about your advantages. So what kind of separates you from your competition? Biggest thing is like stand in your power. What are the things that you're great at? What are your advantages? How does your business stand out? What is unique about your products and what is unique about you? What is unique about your customer service? So you want to think about these things. That way, when you answer questions like in the grant that I had, it's like, yeah, I do have a lot of competitors. In fact, I have one next door that sells vintage stuff too, but this is how I can separate myself from those competitors. So then I also want to talk about community. The most beautiful thing about Craft Lake is the community you're about to meet. You'll meet so many great friends. You'll meet so many great people that have shops like you. You'll meet shops that blow your mind. That's honestly one of the best parts about participating in Craft Lake. So what opportunities exist to build community and collaborations within these networks? The easiest ones for me is, we kind of talked about it. I think Sam was talking about, hey, I have this idea, but someone's kind of doing something similar to it. I don't want to step on their toes. So like, what are ideas? I think that collaboration would be like a good opportunity in that example. You can check in with the person and be like, hey, I love what you're doing. I had a similar idea. Do you want to collaborate on it? And then you can kind of come together and create an even probably better idea. An actual product is a great idea for a collaboration. I don't know if you all follow Blue Velvet Bunny. She did a collaboration. She's also another vintage vendor. She focuses mostly on like 80s and 90s stuff. And then she also does screen printing herself. She did a collaboration with a handmade line called No Flight Back Vintage, and they make like sustainable accessories. So she screen printed a bunch of fabric, and then they made bucket hats out of it. And so they together collectively made like an actual product, which was so awesome. And they both got to share from their feeds, and it was like such a beautiful thing. So I think that's one way, another way that you can do collaborations. Another way that I want to collaborate, so if any of you are interested, you're more than welcome to hit me up, is social media collaborations. And the way that I want to do this is through like Instagram Lives, where we kind of just do check-ins and we talk about things that are exciting that are happening with us or in the store, or things that we're looking to do in the future. I mean, maybe we can even talk about what we're bringing to Craft Lake and little sneak peeks there. So it's just a good way to invite more people into your audience and to other people's audience that have the same values as you, and kind of share your experiences there. I think sometimes with me, social media becomes like a job. So this is a good way for me to fall in love with it again, is by having experiences with friends through it. So now we're going to talk about SWOT, which is my favorite thing ever. I use SWOT as basically a mental planning tool that helps my business think about challenges and determine an action plan to like work towards. You can use it for lots of things. It doesn't just have to be for your business, but it's a really good tool for me when I'm having like situations where I feel like, okay, I don't really know what the best action plan will be, then I'll use SWOT for that. So SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So strengths would be like things you're really good at or things that are moving the idea forward. Weaknesses would be things that you need to get better at. Opportunities would be like things I could do that would help my idea or plan or whatever the SWOT is about. And threats are kind of like things that threaten your idea or threaten the values of what you're kind of challenging in this SWOT. So I just did a general one for the shop. So my strengths are my knowledge of vintage and my ability to source quality inventory. So these are things I feel like I do very well consistently. My weaknesses are time, so limited hours to source, make my handmade, and run day to day. This is a big weakness for me and something I'm working on and probably going to hire someone to help me with. My opportunities are I need to consistently use more social media channels and kind of integrate them together. I need to consider trends that are happening in the industry. And then an opportunity I think I have is combining handmade and vintage. So threats to my business currently are inventory becoming increasingly difficult to find. This is something I battle with all the time. And then an identity crisis. Will I lose loyal vintage customers launching my handmade line? And then something I've been dealing with for the last year is like COVID protocols. So that's just kind of an example of things that my business kind of uses with SWOT. For me, planners and to-do lists are very important and I get a lot done when I utilize them. So that's why this tool is like so special to me. So if that's like something that you use to learn, I think this will be a great tool. I honestly just use Vistaprint to get my tags made. I order kind of big quantities, so for me it's most price effective to do Vistaprint. I create a lot of my like designs just on Canva, and that way I'm able to make them quickly and kind of go from there. But does anyone else use any other printing service? I think I saw moo.com. Sarah, do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, I'm the one that mentioned moo.com, which I use for my backing cards. And then I use some of my backing cards, and then I use gotprint.com for others. Moo is a little more expensive, but I like that the cardstock is a little thicker than some of the other printers. And it has like a like a cool finish to it. But yeah, definitely if you're going by price, Vistaprint or Gotprint would be my recommendations.
Really all that we can put on our rings is one tag, because sometimes you have a product that you can't tag very easily, or that doesn't display well if you do. So we use these barbell stickers. And then we've had custom designed earring cards in 2 ways, so that it can hold a stud earring or it can hold a hoop earring. So it has a cutout window. And then packaging, I think, is super important. If you have a very common product, like say candles, because no matter how good it smells or how well it's made or what ingredients are in it, the thing that people are going to look at first is the product design, the package design. And so we put a lot of work into our labels and how the product looks before you even pick it up. So I would think about that if you have a way to make it look cohesive with your brand and try to give it a theme or picture how it would display well in a store if you were going to go and do wholesale, how it would look on a shelf.
I use pretty plain packaging because my products are usually quite colorful. So I want my packaging to work with whatever product it is. My largest product category is enamel pins, and those are just on like a little business card that's a backing card. And it has my logo on my website on the front, and then on the back it has my social. It has where the item is made, and then it also has like a little compliment, just to make it like a little fun. So it says like, your hair looks great today, or something like that, on the back of the card. And yeah, my other items are pretty similar. The branding is always like my logo, and then usually any like made in the USA or made in China, depending on the item. Which also helps if I wholesale my products to other retailers, and some, especially larger brands, have requirements for that the where the item is made has to be printed on the outside of the item. And so, yeah, that was something that I added to my packaging when my products were picked up by a chain. And then I also look for opportunities to keep my branding on the actual product. So once it's separated from the backing card or from the tag, whatever it is, that my business name stays on it. So for example, on the pins, it costs extra on every pin, but I have the back of the pin. I don't have any nearby, but it says like City of Industry likes you, which I like because it's like a little cute and a little fun, but it still has the business name on there, so that people will remember it. Especially something like enamel pins, like many people like collect them. And so then they've got like a bowl of like 100 pins, and like, who knows which one is mine. So I really hope that the back like helps with that. But then I also am a person who hates like wearing something with like obvious branding. So yeah, I look for ways to like have it on there, but have it like a little hidden, so the person wearing it or using it can find me again. But I'm not, it's not over the top.
For my packaging, I do like to use things that I can use with a lot of different products, and I like to keep it minimal so I don't have like a ton of waste. So I just use paper envelopes that I can put prints in, and they're pink, so they're like my colors. So, it's a nice pop there. And then I just have stickers that I put in there, and I have a little card that's like the Tragic Girls Crybaby Club. So it's just something fun that people can remember and have, and they can put their name on it. So it's just like kind of an interactive little fun extra. People do really like extras with packaging. So there's one thing that keeps people coming back for more.
Yeah, I do have some display pieces that I use over and over again. I have like a pegboard that I bought like 2 sheets of pegboard from Home Depot, and I zip tie them together, and then I zip tie them to like a frame that I make out of copper pipe. So the pipe is sort of like half glued and half I just assemble on site, and then put that together, and it serves to like hold a lot of my products vertically, and also is a bit of a backdrop. But then for my small products, for my pins, I also have them on like a cork board or something like smaller, where they're all together without their packaging. And I usually use that. So I usually use like a letter board. You sort of saw one on in Jacqueline's presentation, that sign that's at their checkout. so I'll have the pins on there, and then it'll also say like my brand name and the pin prices. What I like about that display is that it like really condenses that many products. And then also I can have, if my booth is busy, I can have 1 or 2 people looking at the pegboard wall of all of the packaged pins, and then I can hand someone else the sign to look at all the pins all in one place. So it's good like crowd management, and sort of helps like a couple different brain types, you know, depending on what works for people.
I'm kind of really trying to think of my booth as like a little mini store this year. So I'm trying to make it look like cute in like its own little space. Like I have a shag rug that's like hot pink, and then I'm doing like clothing racks and stuff like that. I just use a photo drop for my back wall that I put a curtain on, which is super easy, super lightweight, so you can, you know, fold it up and take it really easily. And then I'm doing like a little neon sign if I can get that working. So I'm pretty excited about it.
I like back walls that are fabric or vinyl that can fold and be transported easily. And then I have a laser cutter to custom design our jewelry boards and displays, and they have slight branding elements on them, and they're custom sized to our product. So that helps a lot. I think we're going to be using more risers and things to give heights and different levels to the booth, so it has more interest. Usually just little acrylic U-shaped pieces that you can just create levels, and that can give you more space on a table too. So if something's a little higher, then you can use the lower down space to display other items. I just bought some rail bars, which are just metal bars that connect one booth leg to the other leg. And they're mainly for stability in like a windstorm, which hopefully we won't have. But I also am planning to hang my bandanas off of those, just using simple clamps, so that I can have a variable height, so that I can make it higher or lower depending on the specific products that we're hanging. And then we'll have a backdrop of like lifestyle pictures with our logo on it.
It's definitely tricky because I think we've done it a few different ways in the past. I think this is going to be our 3rd year sharing a booth. And so mostly I am coming up with ways that don't work. Like for example, one year we made an L. So they were like the tall end of the L, I was the like bottom end of the L. And then people could walk through our booth sort of in that formation, if that makes sense. But I think with our stuff side by side or right next to each other, that got confusing for people. So usually what we do now is have their products on one side and mine on the other, and then we treat them like 2 mini booths. So I will often have signage above my pegboard wall, and I keep all of my fixtures really like white, whereas theirs are more colorful. So using like some like visual hints like that to suggest that they're a little separate. But honestly, if you're sharing a booth, no matter what you do, you're gonna have people like asking the whole day who is what, or trying to buy stuff from the other vendor. But it's all right. It's also, you know, some ways it's handy. Sometimes if things are getting complicated, or if someone's buying something from both of us, or if one of us has run out for a bathroom break or whatever it is, we also will just cover for each other and sort out the money at the end of the day.